All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. And that's right, the international break is over. The Chelsea men's first team back in action, getting a dub on an away trip to Bournemouth. Well, look, it was not the most exciting game. It was not the most engaging game. It was not the best way to restart after the international break concluded. But Chelsea walk away with 3 points, a win, victory, applause to the supporting fans from the players. And Nick, in a results based business, Chelsea, Maresca, and the players got the job done on an away day with a Premier League clean sheet for the first time in 11 months on an away day.
11 months?
Yeah.
Oh, here I was about to be like, right, yeah, that was great, whatever. Then you had to drop 11 months on me. That was like the piano falling through the roof. Yeah, no, I like we were talking before the pod, and I think, the sentiment was kind of shared around our various group chats yesterday. We have played many matches over the last couple of years where we have quote unquote deserved to win, had more shots on target, missed a critical opportunity, didn't quite, put it away, had a defensive error, whatever, and we didn't win. So we deserved to win, but didn't win. Make a strong case we didn't deserve to win yesterday and we won. And that's a far preferable outcome to the other one where it's the, kind of, hey, we're doing this for the love of the game. Like, no, we're doing this to advance our goals and initiatives. And this was it was scrappy. I think it was pretty damn ugly at times. It was disconnected, but we're going to get into it. It's little moments and little turns that can make these games go in either direction. And luckily yesterday, Chelsea had enough of whatever it was to get it over the line. And, 3 points right after an international break is really, really good. It's not for everyone, Tottenham. And, and now we move.
Yeah, a little Rocky-esque performance from Chelsea against the ropes, but able to come back swinging and walk away with the victory. I do love the fact, and again, we're going to talk about Jaden, Sancho, and Nkunku, all the subs, how they were able to make a massive impact and really cemented the victory, ended up coming in and doing the work to get it done. We also have a couple players like Sanchez that we want to kind of put some respect on the name for the way that he carried himself in this match on others. There are some questions, though, about what's going to happen in midfield with some of the injuries as well as right back. A lot of questions that we still have to kind of get into. And then also, look, we're not going to mince words about it. The absolute historic night for Anthony Taylor in terms of his career and absolute disgraceful performance as a Premier League match official. We don't like to do it often, Nick, but I do think we'll couch a couple minutes at the end here to give him his, I don't know, flowers would not be the right word here. What are we giving him instead?
I think this is where you, as a kid, where you would light a bag of poop on the doorstep and then ring the doorbell. Like that's what we're giving Anthony Taylor. Welcome back to the Anthony Taylor podcast, as he would like this to be. He'd really like us to dive into his performance, the flourishing of the cards, the pointing to the spot, all of these sorts of things. But no, he was. He tried to make it about him yesterday, and luckily Chelsea made it about us, and that was much better.
When you're playing 12 versus 11, you have to figure out a special way to win. I will say I do enjoy the fact that Jaden Sancho had a big part to play in this victory, if only for the fact that United fans have been pointing a lot of fingers over the past couple seasons. So I did really enjoy, I don't follow him on Twitter, but I appreciate sometimes that the algorithm pushes something to me that brings me delight. Was United Trey with the Sancho just got a game-winning assist for Chelsea and their fans are singing his name. What is this pain, man? What is this pain? Oh, it was a great day out for Jaden Sancho. And we're going to get into that and all of this. But before we do that, quick admin as always. Thanks to Amazing Community Sports Podcast. We always appreciate it. If you leave five-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, those are appreciated. You also can subscribe on YouTube. That's right. We drop this video, the full podcast, in video format. You get to see the stash with Nick Verlaney has not been removed because Chelsea have not lost which is an important factor here. You can also hit the bell icon to get notified, subscribe, like, and comment on the videos as we appreciate it. You can join in the conversation in a free or paid way in our Discord community, and you can sign up for a free weekly newsletter, the Lens Blue Dispatch. But let's just get a summary of the match from a couple listeners with our patented 3-word match review, Nick. And there were a couple ones that I selected for you that I think will tickle your fancy.
Yeah, the one that came to mind right after the match, Craig J had, and that was the Coldplay was all yellow. That
Was
was
all yellow.
just, it's perfect. It's exactly what it should be. Well done. Childish Gambino, not Gambino, Gambino. With balloons over Bournemouth, with the Outcast "Bombs Over Baghdad" song there, which was whatever, that was early 2000s. I think it's a very early 2000s music video, but "Balloons Over Bournemouth" is great and probably right. Andrew McDougall with "Blues Book Bournemouth," and then Aaron with Christo's Cherry Crumble. I wonder if he has a recipe, Dan. I wonder if there is a cherry crumble because look, cherry underrated fruit.
Well, that's good. And, I mean, look, he did cook on the day, so I'd be no surprise if he has an opportunity to share something with us. I went with a little bit of an ode to, you have to know Hallmark as a brand in the US, but Taylor's Hallmark moment. Maybe moments would be maybe it needs to be a plural, but I do think that is a accurate way to describe just how much he made himself the star of the show, despite there being 22 individuals on the pitch of far greater importance than him on the day. But I know you also had one that talked about moment or moments as well.
That's right. I went with moment of quality in a game where it felt like neither team had enough of it. We finally found one, just one moment where Sancho connects with Cristo. Cristo decides to shift the ball around, wait for a defender to kind of fall over himself, and then puts it in the far corner and hits off the post and in. And we were crying out for a moment of quality in this match, and we did find it. And so we have to applaud it when it is found. And perhaps it was against the run of play. Who knows?
Look, it doesn't matter when Chelsea win, so we will not debate it further. But look, it was jumping into the match details, a match against Bournemouth on the coast. It is past Saturday, September 14th, in the year of 2024. It was in the Premier League at the Vitality Stadium. Bournemouth 0-1 to Chelsea with Christopher Nkunku in the 86th minute, getting it done, and that Jaden Sancho assist, as we discussed earlier. If we just run through the lineup, it was Big Bob Sanchez between the sticks with Axel Disasi, Wes Fofana, Levi Colwill, and Marc Cucurella as your defense. Moises Caicedo with Renato Vega coming in to join in the midfield, which we'll talk about shortly. Nani Madueke, Cole Palmer, and Pedro Neto were all behind Nico Jackson up top. And again, the subs came earlier than expected. It was Neto out in the 46th minute right after halftime for Jaden Sancho. Joao Felix came in for Nani Madueke in the 61st minute, along with Tosin coming in for Disasi in the 62nd minute, and then Nico Jackson came off in the 79th for Nkunku. You had Jorgensen, Badiashile, Cassidy, Mudryk, and Guiu as the unused subs in this. And maybe, Nick, any surprises? We knew that Malagusto is out injured. We knew Reece James is not back from fitness yet, so we knew that we were going to see a couple of changes to the back line. We know that Lavia is not necessarily ready and raring to go. Enzo was maybe more of the shock surprise, but we've seen this on international breaks where it does take him maybe that extra game to come back to be available just due to some of the travel distance sometimes. Or maybe it's just proof that Moises Caicedo is just absolutely like a ridiculous human and athlete in the N'Golo Kante fashion, with his ability just to be drag and drop into a lineup after international duty as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think both your right backs injured. I don't think it was a coincidence that Ben Chilwell is now a part of the squad again. And I think there was a legitimate school of thought out there that says like Ben Chilwell plays left back. We saw a little bit of what we saw last year with Cucurella going to right back potentially, and that might have to be a solve for the future because I think unless Enzo Maresca does something that he has been unwilling at this point to do, which is play Josh Kimpong at right back, which would be another excellent solve. Disasi after not going on international duty, being at Cobham, getting training in. I know he's coming off an injury and some surgery this summer, but he does not look fit and or ready at all to play in that position. Does not look physically capable of playing in that position. I think we're going to be in a tough spot if we don't figure that out. The late game situation on the right was slide Wes over because he's a much quicker individual than Disasi is, and put Tosin in at center back, which I think for the most part kind of acquitted itself.
Yeah.
But that's a pull in case of emergency option because West is pretty fragile too, and so it's like I think Maresca is going to have to figure out a Pong or Kukurea, and those are your emergency right back options because I just I'm stairs in Trev Chalaba right now. I just don't think we have the personnel at center back to really cover right back.
Well, when we look at some of the stats, I do think they tell a story that Chelsea did on the bounce find a way to get it done in
Mhm.
spite of being under pressure from the home team. It was 1.78 expected goals for Bournemouth to Chelsea's 0.78, one big chance per side. Yeah, sometimes when you only need is one. 19 total shots for Bournemouth to our 10. We had 7 goalkeeper saves, which will bring us back to the Sanchez point in a little bit. They had 16 fouls to our 9. We had 8 yellow cards off of our 9 fouls to their 6 yellow cards off of 16 fouls. And look, the one random stat, though, which I think is a nicer one to focus on, is that all four of Christopher Nkunku's Premier League goals for Chelsea have come away from home as a substitute. Super.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, this is I mean, we're going to talk about Nkunku here in a second, but what a what an incredible option you have there, and I think we'll again dive deeper into him. But I think the fact that he is not a starter in a Premier League side right now is wild.
It's going to create a lot
Put
of
it that way.
questions for Enzo Maresca over the next 24 to 48 hours as Chelsea line up very soon to get started with their League Cup campaign and have to answer a couple questions here. But was there a shithouse moment in the match? Was there one that you recorded or recognized?
I really really enjoyed the goal celebration, not just the balloon because I think the balloon is not shithouse in and of itself, but if you watch the full goal celebration, there's like two angles of it, and the away fans who listen to this podcast will know that he kind of shit talked a bunch of people en route to the away fans and looked pretty steamed as he was going over there, and I was like that's a guy who realizes, what he's just done, and two, that this is probably, against the total run of play, and it's just given at large. And I really, really appreciate that. He had the most swag I've seen him have so far at Chelsea in that moment, and I really appreciated it.
I was surprised that you didn't pull out the Renato Vega going to the fans and picking up the card that way. I do think
Oh, it's another good one. Yeah, yeah,
that
it's
was the
another
one
good
that I
one.
felt like you would have called upon because I know you do love a good celebrating with the fans moment from a player perspective.
Well, I mean, in a game where everyone gets a yellow card, you might as well do a fun one, and I appreciated that. It's like I put that out on Twitter where it was like, why not at this point? Why not? At least, unlike Nico Jackson last year, who was on the bench and did it, which still is just a wild thing to think about. This He was on the field at least, and that was cool and very Antonio Conte like. Dive into the crowd. They were all for it. So yeah, a little bit of shit house in this match that needed it.
Well, we're going to talk about how subs saved the day in just a moment. We're going to get our first ad break out of the way, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Look, Maresca got into the comments right after the match talking about how his quotes here, he was very happy. We played 2 different games. First half, we struggled. We didn't win balls or duels. Second half was much better because we understood these kinds of games where you need to fight an intent to win. And I think that is played out by just, again, we'll go back to the stats here. We look at it. We gave up 11 shots to Bournemouth in the first half. That went down to 8. We had 5 shots the first half. We had 5 shots the second half. We had zero big chances in the first half. We had one big chance in the second half. We had better XG than them in the second half than they did in the first half. I mean, like all of the stats would tell you that it was a better performance. And I think it started with the sub of Jaden Sancho on over Pedro Neto, which I mean, if you're having two or three people try to figure out how to solve for you on the left hand side at times, like you clearly are doing enough good work to create opportunity for others. I think that was what wasn't happening in the first half is Neto wasn't drawing as much attention, wasn't necessarily finding himself in those type of 2v1 positions. And that really gave Chelsea an opportunity to find additional attacking outlets. But I mean, Nick, I mean, it was our first opportunity to see Jaden Sancho play for Chelsea. General thoughts and maybe just, how you feel like he impacted the match.
Well, one, I think it was the right sub, and it was the right sub for this reason. This game did not have great flow to it. It was very choppy, and Bournemouth did a couple of really smart things to make that the case. One, they swarmed the midfield, and our midfield really struggled in this game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And two, they doubled up on Cole Palmer as an outlet, right? And they basically made it through illegal and legal means to kick the shit out of him so that he couldn't impact play offensively, make the right pass, whatever. And so what that means is they basically like centered themselves to go like you're not going through the middle, you have to go through the wings. I think Pedro Neto is much more of a player on the counter who can hurt you with just like bursts of speed and some of his technical ability. Jaden Sancho in possession, this kind of became like backyard football a little bit, whereas like give the really talented guy the ball and let him do something. And the same with Palmer on the other side when he switched out to the right and Felix was going through the middle. It became a lot more one on one. It became a lot more like, how are we going to try and find an advantage cutting through here? And the way you're going to find an advantage is one, give it to the guy with really great skill. And two, you're going to find it through him beating a guy one on one and then creating a mismatch in other ways. And I thought that his relationship with Cucurella straight away was fantastic. Cucurella made the right runs to kind of give him a little bit more space and or get the ball in dangerous positions. You saw him do cutback crosses a few times from a Sancho pass. And then Sancho himself, really, it was like, I don't know, 10 minutes in, you could tell he was really starting to feel himself, really starting to like his matchup. And he started doing tricks and flicks and all the sorts of things that you'd expect. I think he nutmegged whoever was the right back. I need to go look. Sorry. Smith. He started just not. Smith was having a terrible time with it, and he was already on a yellow card, so he couldn't do too much. And this is a player who, based on CFC Central's analysis and all the scouting, thrives in these sorts of situations. Is he the perfect fit for every single matchup that we're going to play this year? Probably not. But in a game that was choppy, that didn't have a ton of flow to it, where Chelsea were starting to control the ball a little bit more in the second half, as you mentioned, he was the perfect outlet to get the ball to and to have the other players have a little bit more time and space around them to go do something. You bring on someone like Christopher Nkunku, who had a great preseason, who's already scored goals this year and seems to really be ready for the moment. You put those two together and watch out. It was a really really great performance. And what I loved about him, is after the game, as humble as pie, like was just like, hey, grateful to be here. It's been I had a great year last year. I was looking to continue the progress. I'm really pleased, for everyone that's helped me as soon as I got into the squad. I mean, he was only been here for 2 weeks. I mean, so I don't know, Dan, not to ramble too much about this, but I thought it was a really, really impressive performance. And it was clear that he was the outlet in the second half, which for Cole Palmer probably was like, oh man, I'm not getting kicked every 2 seconds. This is great.
Yeah, it clearly was frustrating Cole throughout the day to with the way that he
Not
was
be
being.
refereed properly. Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be for me too. Yeah.
just protection of players. Player safety very important. Clearly not. when you look at the way that Jaden impacted the game, so the stats being that he registered more attacking third passes, 15 out of 17. So to be successful out of total attempted, and created the joint most chances too than any player for Bournemouth or Chelsea. And he did that in the 45 minutes that he was on the pitch. He also was two successful take ons out of the four, recovered the ball four times. So, I mean, just some good underlying stats that kind of, I think, match with the eye test that like he was creating a problem, that he was getting involved, that he was doing well within combining play. I think he and Kukurea were finding some good method of working together, which was nice to see, particularly as Kukurea just freelances from time to time and gets very very far forward. But I mean, I think these are all really good things. Maresca's comments also talking about it said Jaden Sancho did exactly what expected of him. He mentioned that Tosin and Nkunku did as well, saying that all guys off the bench were good. I mean, I think it just, to your point, shows the flexibility of what Maresca can have on offer for him, depending upon if all the players are at the level that they need to be. And maybe Neto is still getting up to speed to get himself fully involved, to be able to contribute at a 70 plus minute mark. I mean, we know that Jaden Sancho was brought in to basically be like the left hand side version of what Madueke was offering on the right hand side for Chelsea. So, I mean, this was all kind of really positive stuff. I think the big question that people are going to have beyond Jaden is just, what's going to happen with Christopher Nkunku after, again, he doesn't get lots of starts, but he is an individual who just some of those inner channel runs he makes into the box, the way that he can hold up, his ability to place a shot and take it quickly in the way that he did in this match. I mean, you look at how surrounded he was. Like he there was not a lot of space for him to get the game-winning shot off. And in those 11 minutes he played, he got the one shot on target, the 1 out of 1 dribbles, the 7 total touches. Like he didn't need a lot to get the job done and got it resolved for Chelsea. And I think it's just going to be like, how do we figure out a best fit, or is it going to be back to this whole idea, Nick, of the 211s, or even maybe two different versions of attack based upon the type of teams that may sit back a little bit more, that may want us to have more of the ball, and force us in positions where we have to break down a more resolute, or at least a more stubborn defense.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of thoughts here, right? Because Nkunku, the Nkunku dilemma is one that really shouldn't be, right? I mean, this is, you know, I with Cole Palmer, our most accomplished finisher, he has more experience than Palmer, obviously, is more injury prone than Palmer is. Palmer's proved to be a lot more sturdy in a lot of ways. But I think you have to figure out the Super Saiyan lineup for, if not all of our Premier League matches, a majority of our Premier League matches, right? If you can't run in the Conference League or the Carabao Cup with a real B team, then okay, whatever. But if your goal is to get back in the Champions League, stated goal, then you need some combination of Palmer and Kunku, pick another winger, whether it's Madueke, Sancho, and Jackson. You need those four on the pitch at the same time. I don't, look, do I love Cole being isolated on the right? Do I think he can have as much impact as maybe he would in the center? No. But I also don't love Cole dropping back into a number 6 because our midfield can't do anything either. Like, I think you waste him there. Like, the last 2 matches, he has been absolutely wasted in that position. And I think Nkunku is a whole different bag of tricks altogether. And if you're serious about Joao Felix, potentially being a striker option, then perhaps he's your striker or your number 10 in those in the second 11. And Neto and Mudrik and all these other guys gonna make it. I mean, I don't want to like overemphasize who I think will be the starting wingers, because I don't think Madueke had a particularly accomplished performance yesterday. I thought he was fine. Sancho obviously only has a half. Neto only has a half, so it's hard to like really judge that. But I think the general consensus that I see from people that I trust is Nkunku is too good to be on the bench for 80 minutes. Like, he is, look, he's coming off an injury. He had a terrible run last year, but you have to figure out how to get him on. especially if you, as we saw yesterday, missed a couple of chances from the guy that is on the shirt that I'm wearing right now, which is Nico Jackson. There are going to be some days where Nico fires on all cylinders. There's going to be some days where he wasn't. Whole team looked a little disjointed. Again, not putting it on any one person here, but like you have to make that substitution earlier at the minimum, or you have to figure out a way to get those four roles on the table at the same time. You cannot waste these moments against teams that you should beat. Like you could put that game away earlier and then give them rest, right? So I don't know. I'm very. I looked at yesterday as like a statement from Nkunku, going like, I only need 11 minutes, but I don't think we take that for granted all the time either.
No, I mean, I think it's absolutely critical for him to figure out a way in the minutes he gets to stamp his authority on the pitch with what he gets. I mean, this is another great cameo from him, another opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm here. I can score. I can contribute." I mean, he is only up to again 4 Premier League goals, and he's only featured in at this point like 520 minutes for Chelsea in the Premier League, which is a very, very small amount of time. But the return is really strong when you think about that. It's zero point 0.7 effectively XG every 90 minutes for the time that he's on the pitch. So that is a really good return for little, value minutes. And like definitely tells you that like before someone like Mikhailo Mudrik or Mark Guiu, that like, if he is not necessarily the out and out starter every game, that he is absolutely one of the first attackers that should be coming off of the bench to help spell players. And hopefully you get to a point where, Nico and Nkunku potentially can be the individual who breaks the other. Because ultimately, like we want two forwards, central forwards who are absolutely competing for one another, pushing one another to greater heights and getting an opportunity to be successful. I think you mentioned it earlier, and just in terms of subs, I mean, I think people would generally say that Axel Disasi had a game to forget, and Tosin came in replacement there. I don't know if he did enough to say like, "Oh my gosh, it was amazing," but maybe just from my floor raising perspective, like I think he did enough, particularly with the movement too of West to the right back position and Tosin coming in, definitely gave the defense a little bit more of a sturdy look in the kind of last 20-30 minutes of the match.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tosin has some real pluses and minuses to him, right? So I think in the pluses category, from the limited sample size that we've seen so far, obviously is a massive, massive person. And I think on set pieces, especially at the end of the game, is like a comfort blanket a little bit in that regard. Like, you feel like you have the biggest guy on the pitch, like regardless of if he's only one person, like you just feel a little bit more emboldened that way, I think. Um, he is relatively quick for his size, but is nowhere as quick as what Wes is, right? And so on some of those recovery runs where we were played through way too easily through the midfield, I was like, "Oh, okay, make it, make it, make it." And then usually he is a better passer of the ball, but at the end of the game, gives up a really dumb pass into the middle of midfield that allows a counter chance, right, and allows for a shot on target. These are the things that I think that the team has to work through. I don't know if he's a bona fide Premier League starter or if he's in the second 11, but I think right now, with the way that West is playing at center back, I it's a coin flip. And West was not very good yesterday at center back. I thought he had a pretty uh, bad day, roughly. So I think Tosin comes in and looks good by proxy, and maybe West even looks better at right back because of how bad Disasi was. So like all of these things are kind of like in relation to each other, but I think Tosin added a little bit of calm to
Mhm.
what was a pretty chaotic environment, and so for me, that's enough to like thumbs up for another day, sort of vibes. But yeah, it was an interesting one too. And I don't know about Felix being quote unquote very good. I thought he was fine for the most
He
part.
was kind of absent in his cameo. I mean, if we're just gonna be,
That's
I
his
think
play
frank
style.
about it. Yeah, I mean, he was 6 of 2 on ground duels that he attempted. Yeah, he attempted one long ball, was not kind of effective, 28 total touches. I mean, think about it. Nkunku had in 11 minutes, 7 touches and scores a goal. You had Joao Felix, who had a multiple factors of 7 28, and wasn't able to maybe find kind of the same level of contribution. I mean, again, he's playing more centrally. That's kind of where they were packing a little bit more in terms of trying to stifle Chelsea's attacks. I mean, I think that maybe he was a little bit more of a sacrificial lamb in that regard. But yeah, I don't think he had the best cameo he's ever had as a player, or nor for Chelsea. And so again, onward, upward, hope it's improved. But in the day, we won. And so that's the important thing. We want to talk more about other players, though, because I think there's other players deserving of praise, particularly one, Bob Sanchez. But we're going to do that right after our last ad break. So stay tuned. I'll be right back. All right. Respect on the name for Robert Bob Sanchez on the day, Nick, in terms of a look. I think we would say, maybe you'd say a little bit more. I would say like 99-1 West to Sanchez for giving up the penalty, conceding the penalty. That was not great. Stops a penalty, which is massive. Anytime your goalkeeper steps up, stops a penalty, really, really great news. Kept Chelsea in the game after a bit of a chaotic moment in that first half, and really came alive in the second half with some of the saves that he made that were definitely on the top end on a day that the defense was really just being pulled in all directions. I mean, you had Moises Caicedo, who was playing sometimes as a right back, sometimes as a midfielder, sometimes as a center back. Like, he was doing the Lord's work across multiple positions. But I think this was Sanchez is not always the player of praise. I think in more often than not, he's a player of condemnation. I think that we've been critical of him at
Mhm.
times. So we're talking about great performances for Robert Sanchez at Chelsea. Maybe one of his best days out.
Yeah, it period. It was his best day out in a Chelsea shirt by a mile. This reminded me of a couple of years ago, post Champions League win. It was like the season after the Champions League win, where Mendy stood on his head against Brentford and
Mm.
kept us in the game, and we won 1-0 off a Chilwell goal, I think, in that game. It was that good. The penalty. Here's how you know it was good. The penalty save was good, but he made three other saves that were better in this game off of deflected shots, off of, just getting a fingertip and pushing something around the post. Like, he seemed confident, even coming to catch a cross at times, which has been dicey in the past. He made a really strong punch at the end of the game to get the ball out of dangerous area. He seemed much more on the front foot yesterday. And look, I can't give a ton of emphasis to him giving away the penalty, because the pass from West was that bad. It was really horrific. So I'm just going to ignore that. And he saved it anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Um, he kept us in the game. That penalty save is one of these sliding door moments in football where you you're like, damn, like, we've played bad and we're going to get punished.
Yeah.
And instead, going into half, we played bad and we didn't get punished.
Yeah.
and he single-handedly kept us in that sort of mode, Dan. And that for me is a huge part of him hopefully getting better than he's been.
Well, it left all options on the table for Maresca heading
Mhm.
into the halftime talk. I mean, you're talking about this was the 30th minute of the match, so you only then needed to make it a couple of extra minutes to get into halftime. With all of the fouls and stoppages in the first half, 3 cards for Chelsea, cards for Bournemouth. You would have thought maybe it would have been more than 1 minute of extra added time, but it was, to the 45th plus one that Chelsea had to kind of get it done. And so gave us a lot of opportunity to have the full menu available to us. If that doesn't happen, now we're coming from a deficit. We're probably still making changes at halftime, but now we're in a moment of desperation versus hey, like, this is an even Stevens game and we're going to get an opportunity to compete for it on equal footing. And like that, to me, is such an important part of this.
Mhm.
I mean, we've had, a couple of times this season too, where maybe a player should have been sent off for a second yellow, doesn't, gets an opportunity to come back into a game they should not be able to come back into. But this is the good version of that type of decision heading our way, and the result heading our way. We look at the Robert Sanchez did have his own quotes about it, saying it was good from the referee to not send me off because he couldn't get out of the way. Because that could have also, like, Anthony Taylor could have done his darndest to make that a really, really bad day out for Chelsea with a, potentially a red denial of goal scoring opportunity. And technically on double jeopardy, you're not supposed to be able to have that happen. But we've seen stranger things in the Premier League.
It's not as if Anthony Taylor follows the rules all the time, Dan. So yeah, it's a possibility for sure.
The rules were all I was making. And then when he talked about his penalty save, he said, then the penalty, I was looking at the guy. When the keeper dives early, he tends to switch the ball. So I stood until the last second. Good decision, good save. Nice when you can always pat yourself on the back through a quote on that level. But again, like good day out for Bob. Great day out there. I guess maybe other players, other things that you want to kind of call out here before we kind of transition. Maybe just giving a little flack, little accurate flack to Anthony Taylor for and breaking down the numbers, because I think the numbers make it actually more shocking when you look at the day. But maybe think like Renato Vega in midfield is probably kind of a question mark in terms of what he did or didn't contribute. He looked a little timid at times within the start that he kind of earned through attrition of starting midfielders. But anyway, that was one that I just kind of thought was, we're going to need to see more time. He definitely is not anywhere near the finished product. But other maybe that or other players that you would want to kind of highlight.
In the negative context,
Opportunistic context.
sure. Okay. I mean, there was a lot. I thought Disasi was bad. Fafana was bad. Vega's bad in particular. I think those three players really, really struggled. And I think by proxy, we're going to have this conversation every single week because of the way the club has constructed the squad. You cannot rely on Romeo Lavia to be healthy, right? It's just this is not me wishing ill upon the guy. He's just not been around. He's played a match for Chelsea in each season so far. I think maybe two. It's just not reliable. So you take that person out, and Enzo coming back from an international break is always tough. Like we saw that last year. Like the fact that Caicedo had to play today, I think is a really tough indicator because you don't have the depth available. I think Vega, it's going to take some work to make him into a Premier League quality midfielder. I think he can get away with it in some of our lesser competitions, maybe in the Carabao Cup or in the Conference League or whatever. But in the Premier League, you're going to get abused if you're that position or you're that out of position, I should say. And he did. He absolutely did. I think he did grow into the game in like the last 10 minutes a little bit when we had more of the ball, but it was tough sledding up to that point. And I'm very, 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 very concerned about our midfield. I think Andre Santos would have started and played incredibly well under pressure yesterday, and it did not appear as if we had another answer there at all. I was shocked by that.
Isn't he the Ligue 1 player of the month? Was that believe what I saw, Nicholas? That Andre Santos.
Don't don't even get Jess Froda started about it, Dan. Don't even mention the name. She's gonna pop out somewhere around here and just go full WWE character on Enzo Maresca for not including him in the squad this year. I mean, like this is it's a midfield that is very concerning. Let me just put it that way. It did not have any impact on the game, despite Caicedo trying his damnedest to do everything possible yesterday. I am significantly concerned, and it's pulling, like I said earlier, it's pulling Palmer out of a position where he
Yeah.
does his best work, and so your net negatives are two there instead of just one. So it's not good.
Yeah, I would say I continue to enjoy Levi Colwill this season. Again, not
Oh, great
perfect in his
performance.
game, but I think this was another moment where he's just continuing to look more and more the part of the first choice center back of our grouping. And again, I don't even know. Again, he might not be the best center back in the league. He's maybe not in the 1-2 combo that you're going to find in the 11 of the season. But in terms of a player who is grown up Chelsea player, is developing, is finding his footing in this squad. I'm very happy to see kind of his continued progress here. And then, I mean, I think I guess the only other thing, I mean, before we talk about Taylor, is I am appreciative of what Maresca is making sure happens at the end of matches. I think in particular, we saw it again. You were able to see it on broadcast too. Players going over to the away supporters, getting applauded by the players. It is a very minor thing, in terms of the amount of time it takes to do, the investment that it requires. But Maresca has been instilling this to make sure that like this happens at the end of matches. And he kind of mentioned he was asked about how the fans were. Maresca said, fantastic again. I said the players at the end to go over there and enjoy with the fans because they came down from London and they completely deserve the players to come over. It's always good to share with them. Like it's one of those like stupid small things, right? That could go
Mhm.
unnoticed. And if it wasn't happening, it would absolutely be a point of controversy. But because it is happening, we could take it for granted. And I just don't want that to bypass us because I think it is worthy of recognition and praise to say, like, as a culture perspective, like, this is a positive culture element for Chelsea to have players who want to go over, to recognize the supporters, to have a manager who's making sure that it happens is very
Mhm.
important.
Oh, yeah, like, I this gave me a whole lot of warm fuzzies because it felt to me as watching it live like it was the players applauding the fans just as much as the fans applauding the players, maybe even more. Because the away fans were brilliant yesterday. They were loud. That's a small stadium. It's very hard to get a ticket as an away fan into that stadium. We've never been able to procure one for sure, and it's a very intense, small environment, and it does get loud in there. But the Chelsea fans were so loud that it was really really a good moment. So it can be both things, right? It can be
Yeah.
both that you are doing the right thing, which is always the right thing to do, and that you're taking away a storyline at the time that the club has plenty of those without needing to add more to the pile. So it's great for the environment, it's great for the culture, and it's some one less thing for the press to ask him about. And I do think that, to your earlier point too, just to circle back, like Levi Colwill was my man of the match in this game. I thought he was tremendous. One of his best performances in a Chelsea shirt as well. I thought that he had the passing locked in all day, covered for Fafana all the time, made some huge blocks at the end of the game too,
Mhm.
when Bournemouth had an opportunity. So Levi really really showed up, and I want to see more of that sort of like die-hard defending from him because I know he's capable. He obviously has the other stuff. He can do the long passes. He can do the through balls. He can do the fancy runs down the side when Kukurea is tucked in. He can do all that shit. But what I really want from him is defend in those last second, those clutch moments, and make a name for yourself doing that because your legend as a center back is not built by long diagonals.
Yeah.
Your legend as a center back is built by standing tall in moments where you need to stand tall. And I cannot emphasize for him enough. If he does that and the long balls, he's going to be fucking unstoppable. But he needs to do that part first, and I'm pumped that he did yesterday.
All right, so we avoided it long enough, but we should talk about the record setting day by Anthony Taylor in this moment here. 14 yellow cards dished out by Anthony Taylor is the most in a Premier League game in the competition history. 8 yellow cards to Chelsea, 6 to Bournemouth. And was remember, Bournemouth contributed 16 fouls on the day. Chelsea had 9. Now, one of our yellow cards also came at the expense of our manager as well. So, like, there's some off the field elements too. Anthony Taylor averages 3.81 yellow cards a game and 0.17 red cards. And I think this is maybe just for this season. I'm not sure it's the Sofa score one. It didn't have more kind of dialed in on that. But it was just bad. Like I don't know how we haven't gotten to the point. And maybe this is where like the club needs to, like, is this something we could get Todd and Badad to agree on sending a letter, on publishing a statement, on saying, look, this guy cannot officiate Chelsea matches for the foreseeable future. Like he clearly has a problem with this club, whether he is aware of it, just because you're not aware of your bias, right? Like does not absolve you from the crime of your action. So whether it is implicit or not, like this is an absolute travesty that he continues to get an opportunity to officiate Chelsea matches when there is very clear and like the evidence is not, it's not a small list of evidence anymore, Nick. Like it is a massive amount of crimes that you could just pile up here and say like, look, there's some that you could say are 50-50, but there's enough to say like he doesn't officiate the matches the right way, is way too complacent in some things, is way too heavy-handed in others, has no standard of officiating other than the Anthony Taylor rule system, which is like fucking Calvin ball. Like the rules are made up.
Dan, as you know, I am not an Anthony Taylor fan, and
Neither is a listener of the podcast Noah Khan either.
I will let me just say this. I uh I will never forgive him for the 2016-2017 FA Cup final against Arsenal, where Alexis Sanchez was able to volleyball the ball in the box without any sort of repercussion. I will never forget him for sending off Mateo Kovacic for getting stamped on by an Arsenal player and given a red card in the final of that game. I will never forgive him for the Cucurella hair pull against Tottenham a few seasons ago. He is a shocking, abhorrent referee. It is bad. And don't just take our limited Chelsea view as this. Every fan base around the country hates this motherfucker. Like they hate him. And he's bad. Like he is worse for the game than a lot of other referees. Look, do I think that Jared Gillett has a wonderful reputation as a referee? Not really. Do I think they make mistakes? Absolutely. But I'm to the point with Premier League referees. Again, $1 billion league, 10-cent referees. It's not being the money is not made it into the referee system to make these guys do their jobs better and to find other replacements for them. But it's to the point where MLS referees are just as competent and have a better system for things like video review. And that my standard for Premier League referees is I can accept if they seem clueless. I can't accept if they seem to have a bias. Like the Overton window has shifted so much from I want a professional referee who just calls a game straight up with no bias to they may be clueless, but at least they're not biased against my team. Like that is fucking ridiculous that we even have to worry about this. Like the moment, remember a week ago when it was announced that he was refereeing this game, you heard the collective groan of every Chelsea fan in the universe go, ah, fuck. Here it comes. We know it's coming. And it came. He does nothing to dispel what is going on with this. Like it is crazy. And look, again, for all of this, this guy makes, much like Clattenburg before him, makes the game about him. It's about him. It's about what he can do. It's about how chummy he can get with some players and how strict he can be with others. It's about flourishing a card at a critical opportunity. And of course, it doesn't fucking matter if the same player kicks Cole Palmer on really blatant fouls 3 or 4 times. We're not going to give them a card. Nah, no. We're not going to call balls and strikes. We're not going to call it fair. It's crazy. I know that it won't matter that we're complaining about it on this podcast. I know that it won't reach anybody. I get it, but it's cathartic for me to say, Anthony Taylor, kick rocks, and the sooner you're gone, the better. Like, get out of the league.
So the worst part about this is Kieran Gill was reporting from the Daily Mail reporter kind of afterwards put out the news that Chelsea and Bournemouth will both be fined at £25,000 each by the FA for picking up 6 cards or more last night. We will both clubs being punished for ill discipline. Making the comment though that some of the were remarkably soft penalties or penalties fouls from Anthony Taylor in this match. I mean, just real. I mean, the fact that like the incompetence then causes your club to get a fine, which then also can result in a larger fine. Like, let's say if there's like another performance where actually Chelsea deserve it. Like, be one thing we're like, yeah, you know what, we were ill disciplined and we were deserving and we were bastard go to bastards with bastard filling, as you would say. Like there are games where it's happened where Chelsea are deserving of the fouls that we get, have played an ill-disciplined game, and are deserving of paying a fine. This is absolutely not one of them. And again, this is why you want to rally Chelsea supporters right now. Go on the offensive with this. Like you would not get away to support the club and the ownership group and backing from supporters if you didn't go out against the FA or Taylor in this moment. Be a great galvanizing opportunity.
Go send that fucking invoice to the PGMOL. That's what I would do. I'm not paying this. Your boy's paying this. Like, I'm not paying this 50,000
Get
pounds.
an IOU from Anthony Taylor.
I'm rerouting whatever my accounts payable is. I'm sending that motherfucker out directly. Like, we're turning that thing around because it is ridiculous. Like, look, this was not the Battle of the Bridge from
Right.
2014, where that game 100% deserved a fine from both clubs. It was raucous. This game was chippy for sure. It was chippy. There were some bad fouls. There were some stupid things like the Semenyo Cucurella pushing thing. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. That happens. Like, there was some chippiness. And by the way, let me just say this. It's been Wolves, Palace, and Bournemouth now that are testing our character. They are out to intentionally do this. And by the way, it's a smart, I'm not mad about it. It's a smart strategy. They're going to see if Chelsea can break. If there is a breaking point, no matter how many times we kick Cole Palmer or that we upset Cucurella or that we do something crazy, this is an intentional strategy. And by the way, it's a smart strategy. I'm happy that they're doing it because it's testing our guys. It's putting us under a microscope that will make us better later on. But I mean, some of this is so obvious. Like the kicking of Cole Palmer in this game, I could not get over. This is 3 or 4 times in the first half and 2 or 3 times in the second half where he is receiving the ball back to goal, passes it, and then gets kicked and cleaned out. And nothing's being done about this. I mean, what are we doing?
Well, what we're doing right now is getting ready to look at the league table where Chelsea stand in this exact moment. Again, a victory in spite of all things, including one major Anthony Taylor, the asshole. Um, it's Man City at the top, no surprise, on 12 points. It's Arsenal in second and 10th after beating Spurs. Liverpool in third place on 9 points. You had Aston Villa 9 points as well. They are behind a goal difference, six for Liverpool, one for Aston Villa. Brighton in fifth, currently on 8 points, along with Newcastle, who just at the moment equalized with Wolves as we're recording right now. Brighton ahead on goal difference, 4-2. Nottingham Forest in seventh place, also on 8 points, plus two goal difference. Then Chelsea currently in eighth on 7 points. Um, you know, again, early days, but this is a much better starting trajectory than than prior seasons. And so we should feel good about the where Chelsea are heading at the moment and the fact that Chelsea do have what you would consider winnable fixtures over the next run of games that we have to play here. I mean, this is an
Totally.
opportunity for Chelsea to go on, hopefully, what you would call a bit of a tear. And we go to way to West Ham. We play Borough in the League Cup. So it's a Saturday match, then Tuesday match. Then we play Brighton the following Saturday. That's probably going to be the biggest test before we go back and start the Conference League 6 game matches with Ghent when we go host them at home. And then we have Nottingham Forest, which could be a table position switcher depending upon how the next two Premier League matches go. But I think in general, not the perfect start to the season that we would have hoped for. I mean, I think we all assumed that we would lose to City. I think the only thing you would kind of highlight is we probably should have won against Palace, but to say, hey, we beat up on Wolves, we lost to City, which we kind of expected was going to happen, but we still looked decent enough, in spite of it being the first match under Maresca. We beat Bournemouth when maybe we shouldn't have. The league campaign is off to a pretty solid start. Maybe not a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, but solid B. If we're doing great letter grade scales, this is a solid B start considering I think the injuries, the late acquisitions of players or exit of players, the settling of the squad, the brand new manager. I mean, I think not too much else I feel like we could have hoped for other than winning against Crystal Palace is probably the only blemish on the start of this Premier League campaign.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to before this next international break, which is, if you've lived in the Midwest in the United States before, what I'm about to say is true, which is it's false fall right now. It's not fall. It's still summer. It's still 85 degrees every day, and we haven't reached fall. That's basically how the first or the middle set of matches is in this between the two international breaks. You're going to get a little bit of run of club football again, and then have to pause for another international break. But we have to do really well in this interim period because they're winnable matches. West Ham will be tough, Brighton will be tough, Forest will be tough. But if you win those matches going into Liverpool, again, it's away at Liverpool. Um, by the way, we might be on the BBC ahead of the Liverpool match, so just a heads up on that one. And then you feel like you're making some progress here, and then the run after that: Newcastle, Man United, Arsenal. Like the real meat of the schedule is coming up, so you have to win as many points as you can now, and hope to take points off of the big boys. If you really want to make a run at this thing in the first half of the season, the math is the math. So again, a win is a win. I'm happy about a win. Shouts to Callum Hudson-Odoi for beating Liverpool yesterday. Very pleased for him, young man. And we moved, Dan, and that's enough.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Still tons of more content coming your way this week. We have to get ready for the start of the FAWSL season as the Chelsea women look to defend their title on your Sonia Bonpastor. Chelsea, again, have to get ready for that match against West Ham and then also prepare for the following week match against Barrow. But we are going to get into all of that along with other content. But keep it locked to the channel. Subscribe, like, comment on the YouTube. We invest a lot there. So we appreciate your support, appreciate your help. That's going to do for this episode. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.